that's when we don't know our rights. That's when we don't know what options we have available to us. So today you're going to learn about the different options that you have to, the different options you have available, your legal rights, the different legal processes that you're going to go through, the different types of family law workshops that's available to you. You're going to learn about those different things that are made available to you that you may not never have even heard of or taken advantage of. Then you have, we have our sister Lois, right? She's a family law attorney. She will be able to talk to you about so many different things like divorce, visitation, all of those things that people have fear about. She'll talk about custody, all of those different things, and the different things that happen after divorce, which is called post-divorce. She's going to talk about all of those different types of things, the different types of resources, whether it's financially, the different emotional costs, the things that has affected and impacted many people. But now we just want to let you know that there is help. There are people. All right. So that's what we're going to have on today. So you don't have to be shy with your questions. You don't have to say, oh, I didn't know, I'm divorced and, I'm embarrassed. No, that embarrassment is a trick that the devil's trying to use against you. Sis, you will get help today. You will grow today because you are no longer a victim, but you are a victor. You are living victoriously. So I'm excited that all of you are here on this day. I just want to welcome you to this platform, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pastor Yewande just to say, to our video. Our video is going to play, and then after that.
I work to support the victims and survivors of domestic violence. I work because I remember over 26 years ago, I was on that street of Newark with nowhere to go, with no one to call. I work to support victims and survivors of domestic violence. I work to save life. I work because I want to be the light in the darkness, the hope for the hopeless. Yes, I want to be that dream. I work because I want to put an end to domestic violence. For the last 6 years, TouchLink has been supporting, empowering, and uplifting victims of domestic violence. So I'm calling everyone to join us at TouchLink, to be the hope for the hopeless, to be the light in the darkness, to be the answer to that woman that is crying, to be the shoulder to wipe away their tears, to counsel. That's what TouchLink has been doing. Triaging the cases, counseling the victims and survivors and their children of domestic violence, giving them hope, helping them. This time around, I'm saying let's do it together. Together we can be the hope in the darkness. Together we can be the light around us. Together we can be that village of support. So I'm calling you, let's come together and help and put an end to this pandemic. Yes, domestic violence is a pandemic. Let's end it. Let's put that family together. Let's put that mother and child together. Let's help them. This is why we are working. We are working to put an end to this darkness. My name is Yewande Efodili. I'm the president and founder of TouchLink, a non-profit organization that supports, empower, and uplifts the victims and survivors of domestic violence. Thank you.
I hope that story, just from seeing that story, that it has impacted you in some type of way. But most of all, we want you to know that you are not alone. You are not alone. So let's just go ahead and get started. Our first speaker of this morning will be, I said a little bit about her earlier. I want to hope I say it correctly, which is Vimy Surti. Right? I have a friend named Shruti. So Vimy Surti. She is a coordinator that does immigration legal clinic that provides court accompaniment legal information delivery, interpretation, right? If you need an interpreter, if you need someone to translate to you as well as to someone else, right? Women's support groups, safety planning, and educate survivors about their legal rights, their legal processes, what's about to happen next. That is what she does. She also provides immigration and family law workshops, right? You are not alone. She said, I'm going to make sure that you're educated. You're going to know what steps to take by going to one of these workshops each year to raise awareness about legal services and resources available to survivors of all genders, right? You don't have to just be a woman. You don't have to be a man. It's all genders that she provides services to. So at this time, I would like to introduce to us all here our sister Vimy Surti.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to thank TouchLink for inviting both Louis and me. Many, many thanks to the TouchLink, to the audience for joining Saturday morning. It's a weekend time. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to share my screen and go to the organization that I represent, Manvi's PowerPoint presentation. Just let me pull up the presentation. Okay, hopefully everyone is able to see the screen. I work at Manvi, which is a domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence agency located in New Brunswick in New Jersey. Okay. Manvi basically serves victims of domestic violence from South Asian countries. The countries include Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar. Majority in my experience, this is my 6th year at Manvi. I joined back in 2019. Mostly the population that I see are from India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. What kind of problems do survivors of domestic violence come with in our organization? Mostly they are immigrants, people who are on dependent visa, temporary work visa, like H-4 visa holders, who have temporary green cards, which is a conditional green card, a 2-year green card. And then, they are dependent to get the permanent residency card. I have not come across many, but some of them are naturalized citizens or citizens who reside, who have been born and raised in this country. But mostly when it comes to immigration, it's people who are on dependent visa and who are on temporary green card. Now, these are the major cases that I have come across in my career at Manvi. What does Manvi mean? So Manvi in the Sanskrit language, which is again a South Asian language, means woman. It is located in New Brunswick in New Jersey, and Manvi's mission is to end all forms of intimate partner violence in the community. Yes, we have stated South Asian community. Do we have had other population who have contacted Manvi? Yes, we have had Hispanic, we have had many other population. Have we served them? The answer is yes, we have served them. And it's not only for women. Although Manvi may mean women in Sanskrit, we have had many male survivors whom we have helped and helped to an extent where we can bring a resolution and they can be more self-reliant and basically they break the barrier of domestic violence. Manvi was established in 1985 by 6 South Asian women. It was founded to establish a voice for South Asian immigrants, probably in 1985. I mean, my birth is in 1984, so I don't know what happened in 1985. My assumption is that probably there were not that many women at that point, and there was an incident that took place, and the 6 women came together, and that's how they founded the organization. Manvi provides direct services to survivors of domestic violence. We also do a lot of outreach to spread awareness among the communities. And the outreach has happened in Rutgers University, in schools, in colleges. We have also had tables at different festivals, different locations, and we have drawn many teen violence dating people from Rutgers. So I think outreach has really helped us to bring more survivors in who we can help to serve what they need. What does our services look like? We have a 24/7 hotline. I will type our phone number in the chat box. So if anyone wants to circulate or needs help, they can feel free to call us Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. We have staff members who answers that phone calls. After 6 p.m., it's the volunteers, but it's 24/7 hotline. We have crisis intervention, which means that if an individual is in crisis, we are there to address this right there on the phone. Advocacy. Advocacy is a very big part of Manvi. All our staff members are advocates. We help with different kind of advocacy that may be required. It could be rental, groceries, legal advocacy, sexual violence advocacy, speaking to a landlord. It could be any kind of advocacy which we think that this individual is in crisis, is in need, and needs help in advocating or being the voice for that individual. This is a cultural and linguistically specific counseling, yes, because we have South Asian languages like Gujarati, Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi. All advocates speak all these different South Asian languages. And when we don't have, like, for example, Arabic, we don't have a staff member who speaks Arabic, then we collaborate with organization like Wafa House, and we try to address the needs of the individuals. We have sexual assault support services, legal advocacy program, something that I'm very much involved in. Outreach and education, economic empowerment goes a very long way because, if a woman is financially independent, she can make her choices, she can make her decisions. So economic empowerment is a very big part of Manvi. Cultural humility training, this comes into existence, especially when you go to the court and the court personnels or the judges who are not very well acquainted with what does the South Asian culture may look like. So we do that kind of trainings, which is cultural humility training. And transitional housing, which is like a safe house. It's called Ashiana. And this is at a confidential location. We don't disclose the location, but we support women who are, completely on the road or completely homeless and who needs help in standing up. So that's a transitional housing where they can stay for 6 months to a year and basically become much more empowered. And when they're ready to go out in the world, they have a job, there are certain basic things which are fulfilled enough to stand up on their own and then go out in the world. So that's Ashiana. Ashiana in the Urdu language, it means nest, where you're nurturing someone to make them more self-independent. The Ashiana was established at Manvi in 1997. It's a culturally specific transitional home, which means the survivors who have come and stayed in Ashiana, the advocates pretty much speak their language. So we try to fulfill everything that could be. It could be legal, it could be helping out them with their job, with them counseling part. So cultural specific transitional home only because the advocates speak their language. It's a home for women and children, women who have left in an abusive situation along with the kids. Ashiana has provided them that shelter. So it's women and kids whom we have accommodated in past. Ashiana currently can accommodate up to 9 women. It provides culturally specific services like counseling, peer support counseling, legal advocacy, and other services. Only South Asian transitional home culture specific housing available on the East Coast to South Asian women. That's true. This is the only South Asian transitional home in the East Coast because this is not something like a shelter because shelter is more supervised facility. This is a non-supervised facility, although it just has 9 residents, but those 9 residents can become more self-reliant. They can stay up to 6 months to a year. Some have also crossed a year, but we make sure that they are 100% completely independent to step out into the world. So it's not a temporary accommodation like a shelter, but it's much more beyond shelter. intersection of domestic violence and sexual violence. We all know that domestic violence and sexual violence sometimes go hand in hand. Domestic violence can be physical, mental, emotional, financial, sexual abuse. Sexual violence includes rape, child sexual abuse, intimate partner. There is a use of fear, humiliation, misery, manipulation, power over the victim. Girls in our statistics or in our data, especially in the South Asian culture, we have seen more women coming for help than men. That doesn't mean that the male doesn't go through it, but we have seen more of the ratio for women. And that's why educating young girls in the schools and colleges becomes extremely important, that what does the intersection of domestic violence and sexual violence look like? Survivors have so many intersecting identities like race, gender, class, what class you come from, what is your status quo. There is just so many intricacies, especially within the culture. You are living in a joint family system, mother-in-law, father-in-law. There are just so many complexity. It's not very black and white. There are so many gray areas that we have to dissect, understand, and go step by step. So with any culture, especially within the South Asian, we have seen this much more, that there are so many intersecting identities, mostly women who do not know the language, who is very marginalized, who has migrated from a different country, who is alone here, goes through a lot more domestic violence than someone who has a support or who is financially empowered. Does that mean that the financially empowered women don't go through the domestic violence? No, they do go through, but the ratio of this kind of women who having an intersection identity is much more larger. These are the stats which I'm not going through, but here in the last sentence, on average, Manvi helps at least 300 survivors a year. In COVID, when we had last year, Manvi helped around 1,000 survivors. It was 960 plus something. This was just last year's ratio. Because this is an old slide, we have not updated it. But last year, during our gala, we made an announcement that Manvi did cross 960 plus. And this happened especially in the COVID-19, where we saw a spike and a very high rise in the abuse part. What does a victim look like? We all know that anyone can be a victim of abuse. There is a lot of myth. If a woman is in an abusive relationship, why doesn't she live a relationship? Is that really that simple? No. Within the communities, we have seen that there is a lot of victim blaming. There is a lot more attached to living the relationship, especially when you are in an abusive relationship. There is a fear of children, fear of not having money, fear of within the culture, within the South Asian culture, a stigma of divorce, a fear of what will community or people say. And we have also come across where if a victim, especially if it's a woman who leaves, not every victim's parents or family supports. So where does she go? There is a lot of insecurity, fear, not knowing what to do next. Again, what are the barriers? The barriers is a patriarchal culture, strong belief in fate that, oh, this was meant to happen. This is my karma. Many women come to us and say, this was my karma. I was meant to just face this abuse for the rest of my life. No, that's not true. Many women, despite of knowing that this is wrong, they are unable to speak up only because they want to tie to the loyalty. So no, I have to be loyal. That makes me a good woman. And many women who are, I have seen, religious, that's what Shiksha Patri says, or that's what this religious book says, that no, you have to be a good woman. There are a lot of taboo, a lot of stigma, a lot of myths, a lot of beliefs that doesn't align you with the culture and with giving you the freedom that you need to take it in your hands. Lot of lack of information and resources, lack of evidence. This again, Lewis and I, we both have seen when survivors of domestic violence call us, and when they tell us, oh, I have been facing this abuse for like 5 years, 6 years, where there are questions that we have asked. Have you made a police report? Do you have something written? No, they don't have any evidence. And just based on one incident, then it is very, very difficult to proceed ahead when there is no evidence established. Legal residency, when you are on a dependent, when your spouse has a much more stronger visa, it could be H1, it could be L1. And when they have a much more broader visa compared and you're dependent, it is very difficult to leave the abusive relationship, because where will you stand? Once you leave that relationship, where will your visa or immigration status stand? So those are the barriers that we have to help them out. Bias against divorce, shames, family, community, guilt, fear of losing custody of the children, financial difficulties, and stigma of mental health. We know what kind of pressure inside out the victims go through. There is just so much of a trauma, and seeking mental help, especially within the South Asian culture, I have realized it's such a big stigma, as if like, oh, something is wrong. Mentally, something is wrong with me. And that's why it's my fault only. I'm doing something wrong. No, no. So I think educating them that what does mental health look like? Every individual who could have a perfect, beautiful life may also require a therapy. So educating them on why mental health therapy or mental health needs to be talked about, seeked about, is extremely important. How do we support someone, or how to support someone? Do not judge them. Let them have their own voice. Let them share their own story. It's very, very important they speak in their own words. Do not re-victimize. Going back to past again and again leads to re-victimization. It's very important what we do now. Do not give ultimatums, or do not make decisions for them. I think this is very important. We have to lay out all the options and give them the power to control what they want to do. Listen, believe what they have to say, because it's their story. We have not lived their story. So stepping into the shoe, in their shoe, and looking at from their perspective becomes extremely important. Offer concern and support. Ask them, what do you need? This is a very important question. The needs varies. The needs are very, very different for different people. And refer them to professional DV services. If anyone, even from your audience, from your organization, if anyone needs any support, Manvi PO Box is listed here. The phone number is 732-435-1414. We also have Manvi's website listed here, and I will put my email address. Anyone can feel free to call our hotline and seek any help that they may require. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Vivi. We appreciate that, Manvi. So you see that there's different organizations out there, different tools that TouchLink is attached with. And so we do appreciate you. You do not have to be just from the Middle Eastern. You can be from any part of the world to receive assistance. So please visit the website so you can learn more information. Thank you for that. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Lois. She is a family law attorney in New Jersey, and she represents her clients in family court on divorce, on custody, and post-divorce matters, and as well as non-dissolution family legal issues. Her work is focused on promoting swift resolution of family legal issues at the least financial and emotional cost. So she tries not to put a hurt in your pocket. That's what that means. Not only that, she's been practicing law since 2012. She has her own practice. Okay, so this is not somebody we found and, they just said, I want to be, they woke up today saying that I want to be an attorney. No, she went to school. She has an experience. She has a story, and she's here to teach. She's here to encourage, and she's here to let you know about the services that she is able to provide. She has helped women, and she has also helped Manvi in the South Asian area as well. So please listen up. put your questions in the chat, because after this, we will have Q&A. If you haven't already shared this link, share it, because we don't want people to miss out. Look at the topic, Domestic Violence 101, the process, right? So we're excited and we welcome you, Mrs. Lois.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you for that introduction. What I'm going to talk about is domestic violence from start to finish. So at this point, I'm starting from the point where you've met us at Manvi, and we've counseled you, and something has happened usually, and you find yourself having been granted a TRO. So normally something will happen, an incident will happen, and then you'll go to the police station or at the courthouse, and usually now the police officers, court personnel trained well enough to ask you if you want to file for a restraining order. And then that's what you do, and that's what we call the temporary restraining order, is the TRO. And that's what starts the process. So what I'm showing you as the Prevention Against Domestic Violence, this is the statute. This is the law that governs the prevention of domestic violence in New Jersey. So once a temporary restraining order is filed, when you file a temporary restraining order, what you get is a hearing date. So the temporary restraining order, it's only you and a police officer. The police officer then relays information to the judge. There's usually a judge who works round the clock, so to speak. And that judge will then, after the facts, the police officer gives the judge the facts. Sometimes the judge will also ask to speak with you. And then at that point, the judge will enter a temporary restraining order. The reason they're temporary is because at that point, it's just you and the judge. The other party is not there to tell their side of the story. So we normally say that you will quite easily be granted a temporary restraining order because it's really just your facts that are being presented to the judge. And then you have to have the final hearing, which takes place between 7 to 10 days. Now, there's usually a delay because, there's constant these cases are constantly coming. So even if you're scheduled between 7 to 10 days, your case may not happen in 10 days, it may happen after 20 days, and so on and so forth, because once you get into the court, then there are scheduling issues. As I've said here, recommend to speak to an attorney or domestic violence advocates which are affiliated with each county. So each county has domestic violence advocates, and they are in the nature of, what TouchLink does, what Manvi does, what Safe and Sound does. There's Women Aware in Middlesex County. There's JBWS in Essex County. So these are advocates who usually come to the courthouse on a domestic violence day, and they get the list of people who have come in for domestic violence matters, and they will ask you if you need to speak with someone or if you need advice. So they will give you some counseling. They will kind of tell you they'll look at your restraining order, make certain recommendations, such as maybe you need to amend it so that you can, put in more if there's a history, and so on. And also, give you recommendation for pro bono attorneys or attorneys that are affiliated with the organization and usually handle these matters. So it's always advisable when you go to the courthouse and you have a TRO, look out for these people around there, these advocates, and speak with them. They're there to help you. So from an attorney's perspective, when, let's say, you come to me, and as Vimy was talking about, the barriers to people seeking temporary restraining or people actually speaking out on domestic violence. Now, when you come to me and you have your TRO, I'm asking you about the allegations. You know, I want details. What happened? Was this an argument? Is this typical? Does this happen? Were children present? Does it happen often? What were the circumstances? Was there an argument between the two of you? Is there something that's been going on? Have the two of you been contemplating divorce, or have the two of you been contemplating, even when it's not a situation of divorce, and let's say it's a situation where, you know, you lived together, cohabitation, have you been contemplating separating? And these are the issues that are coming up and then are causing you to have conflict. And so this thing happened, and then you filed your TRO. So that's the information I'm trying to get. So the more detailed you are, the more, once you file your TRO, the best thing that you can do is really prepare to meet your attorney with your facts, with your records, anything that can help the attorney understand that, you know, this is truly a domestic violence situation, because we also know, and attorneys and judges are very cognizant of people who use the domestic violence law to get advantages in custody and divorce and so on. So that's really very important. And that's what Vimy was talking about, the difficulty of the evidence and people not having proof. Still, that should not stop you from at least speaking out. Even that first step of filing a TRO, even the step of connecting with advocates and talking to people and letting people know that you're in a domestic violence situation going on with you. It's very important to speak up. Now, another important issue, point of domestic violence restraining orders is the incidents and the specificity of incidents, dates and times, who was present, what exactly happened, were the police called. These are important details to have when you're speaking with other people, with advocates, with your legal counsel, about making what happened concrete is really very important. Then what we are asking for when you come to a meeting with advocates, with your lawyer, if you have prior restraining orders, if there are prior reports, good or bad, because, you know, sometimes you could find yourself in a situation where even you reacted in a way that the other party called the police on you. If good and bad, everything has to come in, because the last thing you want is for your attorney to be ambushed with some past history that you had that, you know, is negative on you. Because all these things in a domestic violence situations, all these things can be explained because people react in certain ways. We call it now, something that I recently found out with a case I was handling, something called reactive abuse. So that is something that I'm very mindful of now. And, you know, we don't judge somebody's reaction when they're in a domestic violence situation. So we talk about who qualifies for an FRO. People who qualify for an FRO are people who are a victim in the jurisdiction. And jurisdiction in this case, we mean where it is that you can bring your case to court. And jurisdiction usually depends on where you live and where you have your residence, a common address that you have. But in some occasions, when you have fled domestic violence and you're in another jurisdiction, another state, or another county, all these things are considered in terms of jurisdiction. There has to be an aggressor. There was somebody who did something to you. And then the other thing is that there has to be a finding or determination. Usually it is a judge that, and it's always a judge, that an FRO is necessary to prevent future abuse. So this what I'm showing here, what we call predicate acts. Predicate acts, that is a legal term meaning what do you have to show to qualify as what is the showing that qualifies as domestic violence? So of course, we have the easy ones, which are the homicide, assault. The first 10 are usually, or the first, let's say 13 are usually very easy. If they exist, then it's very easy to prove that there's domestic violence happening. One of the difficult ones that we deal with is harassment, stalking, and actually terroristic threats. Those ones, it's not that easy to make a showing of, because anything can be harassment, and we talk about anything being harassment. But when we're talking about assault, we talk about simple assault, where there's a hitting, there's physical violence, and you can show it by way of an injury, or they show it by way of I was in pain, or you sought medical attention. Something that you sought medical attention for is in many cases is self-evidence of domestic violence. And so that's what we talk about, simple assault. And simple assault is somebody who attempts to cause, purposely causes bodily injury to another. And this is why it's usually advisable to speak to an attorney, because, something that may present itself as, well, I wasn't physically injured or I wasn't physically hurt, still can come into a showing of assault. And it takes an attorney to even, prepare or show it in a way that this is what you think is not assault because you didn't have an injury is actually an assault, because we talk about assault being an attempt as well as the actual assault. So as you can see here, in reality, especially when we're dealing with domestic violence, it's not much proof is required. Even the slightest physical contact, as a mention of, they touched me and I was in pain, or they did something that caused me pain is usually enough to prove an assault in domestic violence. Terroristic threats, again, somebody threatening you that I'm going to kill you, or saying I'm coming, I'm going to kill you. The difficulty here is, what is the reaction of the person to this threat of the threat to kill? Usually it's the threat to kill. And we look at, when that was said, what did the person do? Because then we want to show that what was said put the person in fear. And so when you're talking to an attorney is trying to elicit that kind of information from you, so that again you can strengthen your case when you're actually seeking the final restraining order. So we talk about, again here, it's the more detail of, the reasonable person believing that the threat is imminent. So all facts have to be considered, because sometimes, somebody says, I'll kill you, and the other person says, I'll kill you too. Or I'll kill you, and the other person just continues to do what they're doing. And there are ways to explain all that. But again, that's what we talk about, looking at all the surrounding circumstances. Harassment. This is one of the very complex, we call them predicate acts. It's very difficult to prove harassment, because everything can be harassment, because it is somebody, we talk about harassment being somebody bothering you, somebody causing you aggravation. That could be anything. And what we look at is, what is the purpose of this person who is harassing you? What they're doing, whether they're communicating with you, whether they're doing things that you're considering harassing. What is their purpose? So you'll find the typical one that happens is, let's say, for example, somebody has two people, they have a child together, and somebody's constantly calling, constantly, repeated calls. And then you come to court and you say, this person was harassing me. And then the person that's making the calls comes to court and says at the trial and says, actually, I was calling to find out about our child, and the person was ignoring me. That's not harassment, because the purpose was to find out about their child, and that you not responding to that doesn't prove that it is, then you lose your case, because if that's the only reason that you came to court, because the person was calling me repeatedly, and then they come and say that I was calling because I was trying to find out about our child, then you lose. So that's like a good example that you can take with you when you're trying to focus. What is the purpose of the call? What is the purpose of their actions towards me? And that's what a court would normally look at to determine whether that is harassment. And so we also talk about the burden of proof. The victim, or survivor as we call them, the person who files the temporary restraining order, is the one who has to prove, and we call it by the preponderance of the evidence. We call it, when you think about it, 51%, the one who is believed more than the other party. So yours is to make sure that whatever your testimony is logical, it makes sense, so that, because the burden is very slight, so it's very slight in your favor, and it can be very slight against you. So just make sure that what you're presenting to the court is logical, it makes sense, and most importantly, it is truthful. So I wanted to briefly talk about what a new development in New Jersey domestic violence statute, what we call coercive control. And coercive control is a pattern of behavior that is typically found in domestic violence, pattern of behavior which is not the usual predicate acts that we talk about, but pattern of behavior of control, or pattern of power and control by a perpetrator over the victim. Now, it is challenging for a court to really identify what is coercive control, because it is very much in a relationship, it is very much a dynamic of a relationship. So, in certain cultures, in certain relationship, some things are acceptable and some things are not. So, but still, a court recognizes that where it could be okay or considered to be a cultural thing to do in some cultures, could be markings or hallmarks of domestic violence, or could be hallmarks of coercive control, which leads into domestic violence. So this is a positive development in domestic violence, because it has often been very difficult for us to really inform the court or make the court aware of some of these things that look like, well, I don't get the key to the mailbox. I can't open up the mail. I don't have access to our finances. I don't drive. I came to this country. It's been 5 years and I still don't have the ability to drive. My partner drives me everywhere. I'm not in the records, in the school records. I'm not allowed to be in the school records. I am not allowed to work. These are the dynamics and a pattern of coercive control, and the whole power and control dynamic comes forward, or is shown to the court. The court is educated that such certain cultural aspects are actually evidence of coercive control. So again, it is a good development for those of us who are in we work in domestic violence, and even for advocates now can able to elicit this information from victims of domestic violence that helps them then make their cases stronger in court. So preparation, there's got to be a lot of preparation in trying in when you're presenting your case in court. And I recognize that not everyone can afford, number one, afford to get an attorney. But at the same time, we are, courts always get clients or victims who represent themselves. So preparation is key. Be able to tell your story, to answer coherently, to be able to answer the question that's asked to you by the judge, to be able to have your evidence ready. That's what the advocates at the courthouse are there for you, that when you go to court, you're able to marshal up your proofs so that you present them in a way that is helpful to the court in order to be able to enter the final restraining order for your protection. We talk about relief to request. So when we talk about relief let's assume that the judge has entered a final restraining order for you, and there are other things that you have to have or keep in mind that you want the judge to also order as part of your final restraining order. Custody and visitation, because as you know, when you get a final restraining order, the other party now is barred from returning to the home, is barred from any contact with you, and all these other, and also go to cannot be allowed to your place of employment and so on. So you have to be ready to talk about what you want to happen with custody. Be ready to talk about what will happen with visitation. Financial relief. Be ready to speak about what you need. If the person is the one who pays the mortgage, is the one who pays, you don't have access to bank accounts and so on and so on. Be ready to speak about that, because usually when a final restraining order is ended, the judges recognize that now the other party has to figure out where they're going to go and how they're going to live. And so at this temporary stage, you have to at least make the court understand that you are in desperate need of the continued support. And especially if you're going to remain in the home with the children and he's the one who pays the rent, be ready with those numbers, be ready with what you do typically so that you can be able to help the judge make a decision for you. So generally it's a lot, I know. That's generally where I would stop in terms of telling you what to do when you're faced with a TRO and you're looking for a final restraining order. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, our attorney, Ms. Lois. We thank you so much for that. I know that many people have questions, so we're able to answer a few questions. And if not, you can always drop them here in the chat. Like we said, you could drop your questions here if you're not wanting to ask. But you can always visit the website, right? You can go to www.touchlink.org to learn more about these resources. We do have information on both of the presenters from today. I even learned something as well. I never heard of a reactive response in regards to DV. So it's good to know. Thank you for the tools that you have provided with us today. I want to make sure that everybody also know that in order for us to be able to provide any support, I mean, both for the ladies that spoke previously, they talked about resources, right? These things take money, it takes resources. So please, if you can, donate. Please, if you can, attend, support. TouchLink is having a closing rally on October 26th. And during that time, you can even starting today, you can start fundraising today. You can give today and help support the race by registering, attending. The QR code is posted. You can scan the QR code and you can even let others know, share it on your social media platform. It's a fun event. It's in person, right? It's not in Zoom, so you can get out and get some exercise on. It's located in Woodbridge, New Jersey, or off of the main street. So like you can see the flyer, take a screenshot, scan the QR code, but we do need everyone, please donate if you can't make it in person. I also want to take this time to invite you to the final session, the final information session of this month. Okay, it's going to be Thursday at 9 p.m. Our speaker is Nicole Sutton. Guess what she's going to be talking about? She's going to be talking about domestic violence and public health, right? So please take time, if you can, mark your calendar so you do not miss out on these events that we have coming up. I want to also see there's a chat in there's a statement in the chat. If you all haven't been reading the chat, there's different types of training, there's different types of requests, that different type of things that we have available. So I'm going to go back to the chat because I see some statements in there. And it says, for one person, it says, this is going to be for you, Attorney Lois. It says the judges also need training on the impact of trauma from DV, domestic violence victims. So they know that they may not have the law that it requires. So with that said, is there any expert witnesses are called to help cases in court? With that said.
Yeah, so it's so true about the judges needing training on the impact of trauma. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about reactive abuse. I think that's like the next, because reactive abuse is actually a trauma response. And again, and I'll tell you, I found it out, the client that I was representing, I found out more about it on TikTok because she told me go to TikTok and you're going to see a lot of it. And it's great because TikTok, you see it visually. So it's less about what you're reading. It's more when you see it, then you know, oh, that's what it is. But you're right. The judges definitely need they definitely need a lot more training. It's very rare to find a judge who truly understands domestic violence the way it really should be understood. But to answer your question about expert witnesses, I'm going to say, yes, there are expert witnesses. The problem, though, is still the understanding of, we talk about the battered women's syndrome and all these things. There's still a gap in understanding. And the other thing too is the domestic violence cases are very much summary proceedings, very fast. So the decision has to be made quickly. If you start asking for expert witnesses, then you're going beyond the realm of what domestic a final restraining order is supposed to handle. So so if you ask for an expert witness in your domestic violence hearing, you will most likely not be granted, because judges are supposed to be experts, because they are supposed to be trained in recognizing. They're supposed to be highly trained in recognizing and being able to make the calls for when there is domestic violence. So that's what I would want to tell you about that.
Because we have another question and because of time, I want to say this too. You can always appeal. Okay, you can always appeal. So the question that we have is, can a restraining order be filed after the divorce is done? And in regards to the shared custody. So a lot of people have this question in regards to custody as well. I mean, I know that a restraining order can be done anytime. I'm not an attorney, but I do know that. But there's something that before your custody hearing, there's a meeting that people are missing going to that meeting. And I know that we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but if you can just explain the first part, if they can now get a restraining order after marriage, after
Yes.
the divorce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The other part to that question is, what's the case if you share custody? If you share custody and you need that restraining order because that person is causing some sort of abuse to you.
Yeah, and again, that's the difficulty of restraining orders in custody situations, because judges are also very aware. You heard me talk about people using we call it using the restraining order as a shield, as a sword and not a shield. So in the context of custody, and you can file for a restraining order at any time, but understand that your request for a restraining order is going to be greatly scrutinized, because the judges want to make sure that you're not using the restraining order as a sword to prevent the other parent from having contact with the child. So that's what I would just caution you to be aware of.
Okay, so I have one other question, and so I have a couple of statements. I guess you can just read those statements to yourself. Those are just how people feel. But the question is, how long do you have to file for a restraining order in New Jersey? And is it the same nationally, or is each state different?
Okay, really, restraining orders have to, it's always better, because one thing I didn't mention, and you have to, that guides restraining order, is credibility. So credibility begins the determination of credibility, which is what undergirds your domestic violence case, begins from the moment you are filing your restraining order. So what is credibility? Is can we believe what you're saying? And we start to question your credibility from the moment you file your restraining order. Why do I say that? Because when you come to how long do you have to file a restraining order? So let's say something happened a week ago, and it took you a month to file a restraining order. Why did it take that long? That calls into question your credibility. So it could take you a while to file your restraining order, but then be prepared to answer why it is that it took you so long, because the defendant and their attorney are going to question why it is that it took you that long to file a restraining order. But I've seen them. I dealt with a case where a restraining order was filed a year after the incident happened. The person went to California, came back when the other party was seeking custody, and came back and filed a restraining order. So you can file it at any time, but then your credibility will be called into question. And again, and the question about nationally, again, remember jurisdiction is an important thing here. So when you talk about nationally, the first thing you have to show is that that court that you're filing has jurisdiction over you, or has jurisdiction over you, over the case, and over the defendant.
That's right. So guess what? We thank you for that. We hope that these answers helped. But if you didn't get your question in today, and maybe you have more questions later, you can always go to TouchLink. We can get you in contact with our attorney, Lois, and many other people that you may have questions on different organizations that we have connections with. So please visit www.touchlink.org to learn more information. Remember to please scan the QR code. You can also reach out to info@touchlink for more information on what you heard today. Once again, we thank you all for joining, especially to our wonderful, wonderful hosts. To our wonderful guests. We thank you for sharing the information that you have. And to all of you that had attended, you could have been anywhere else, but you decided to be here. So for that, we say thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Vimin and Louise. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. God bless you. We'll be in touch with you.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
everybody, for joining.